Hi there, it's Editor-chan. Today I'm going to be building this pose here from scratch. This solves the mystery of why my shirt comes off so soon in the stripping order, because it was outside my control. This video won't be covering anything not already covered in the other pose maker videos, but it's nice to see the whole pose making process from beginning to end. As you can see in the timeline, it's quite a bit more complicated than anything else we've done. So let's start from the basics. I'll add a new pose named 1-strip so that it applies to stage 1. The first sprite is obvious, we need me to look up at the sky ominously. The images for this pose were created off camera. This one was called 1-look up. Next, just thinking this pose through, we need some storm clouds to roll in, so I'll add a few clouds. I'll add the first sprite manually, and then duplicate it. You can do this by either selecting the sprite and right-clicking, or selecting the sprite and pressing Ctrl-D. Next, I'll rename these for organization's sake. Names don't have any meaning in the game. Okay, to have these roll in, I'll position them off to the sides of the screen. Remember that these are just to the sides of my character, not the sides of the whole game screen, so I'm also going to make them fade in smoothly to be a little less jarring. But first, let's get them all in position. At 1 second, I'll move them to their final positions. Looks decent enough. They move over my head. Not too exciting yet. Now to actually make the fade. I'll have them become fully solid half a second in. I also need to go back to the start and put their opacities to 0 to start invisible. I'm going to make the fade start slow and then speed up by using an ease and easing mode. It's good to play around with these to find something that looks nice. Alright, the clouds now fade in as they slide over my head. Looking pretty good. You know, I think it'd be nice to have them slow as they reach their resting positions, so I'll change the ease modes to ease out. It's not that big of a difference, but I think it's a little better. What next? Let's add a rain effect. First I'll give the rain a better name. I'm going to have the rain pour down by scaling it. Since right now, scaling will stretch the top and bottom of the sprite, I'll move the pivot point to the top. This way it will stretch downwards only. Okay, so I've got the rain, but it's here before the clouds are. Let's move the starting point for this sprite over to where the clouds have moved into position. Then I'll stretch out the rain to fit the clouds and start inside them. Next, let's move the time marker over a bit, and then stretch the rain down to the bottom to have it come out of the clouds. Let's see how it looks. I think it comes down a little too fast, so I'll move this keyframe over a bit. That's better. I also want to add a fade in effect, so let's put the opacity at something semi-solid here. And then at the start, make it nearly invisible. Okay, just going to see how it looks. Pretty decent. Now, let's take care of this sorting problem, since right now the rain is on top of the clouds. I'll collapse these sprites in the timeline just so they aren't taking so much space, and then I'll drag the rain above the clouds in order to layer it behind them. Next, I want to add some life to this rain to help sell the effect. A cheap way to simulate rain is to have the streaks fade in and out, so first, I'm going to hold Ctrl and drag the last keyframe to pull out a copy of it to where I want to stop the rain. Next, I'll jump to arbitrary points within the animation and change the opacity up and down to something random. Then at the very end, I'll have it fade out completely. Let's play it. Obviously I could spend more time tweaking, but I think it looks okay. Okay, it's time for where the real action begins. Let's add a lightning bolt sprite. The name is good enough for me already, so I won't change it. For layering, I'll drag this behind the rain and clouds. Now to position the bolt somewhere good. Oops, I grabbed the rain since it's in front. I'll delete this accidental keyframe on the rain. And then move the rain behind the lightning. For good measure, I'm also going to hide the rain sprite so I don't accidentally click it. Now I can move the lightning into a good position where it's striking my shirt. Does this physically make sense? No, but this game isn't Weather Simulator. Deal with it. I think I'm also going to move this top cloud over a bit so that it covers the bolt better. I'll need to make sure I have the cloud's last keyframe selected, and then I can move it to a new position. Okay, back to adjusting the bolt. Here's good enough. Since I'm going to be making it flash, I need to add full opacity to the initial keyframe. Then I'll make a few more frames turning the opacity on and off. Look! It's flashing. How pretty. I want to make the second flash a bit longer though, so I'll drag out the final few frames. There. That works for me. Now, the next step is to make it look like I actually got struck by lightning. Let's select my sprite and move the time marker to the point the lightning strikes. I've got a few poses here, one jumping in the air and another of the same, but with my skeleton visible. You know, the classic cartoon electrocution look. So like the lightning's opacity, let's put a few keyframes next to each other, alternating my image source. I can also speed this up by selecting the source frame, pressing Ctrl-C to copy it, and then Ctrl-V to paste it at the right point. I think I put the wrong image into this middle frame here. Let me copy one of the others and paste over it. There. Ouch! That looks so painful. I'm going to stagger this from the lightning a little by pulling these out slightly. Okay, now the next step is to have my shirt disintegrate. Let's get my final zapped pose out. Next, for the disintegration effect, I got an image of my shirt using the part transparency settings in the importer, and then in Photoshop, I added a layer of black and white noise in order to select random pixels. Using that, I separated the shirt into 4 different images containing random pixels from the original image. To disintegrate them, I'm going to fade each of these images at different speeds, so it looks like parts of the shirt are fading away. First, I need to move the shirts into position. I'll move one into the right place. And then in the timeline, I'll hold down Ctrl to select only the X and Y parts of the keyframe, copy them with Ctrl-C, and then select the frames of the other shirts, and use Ctrl-V to paste the X and Y values in. I made sure to only select X and Y, because otherwise copying and pasting would overwrite the image source too. Okay, it's time to do the fade effect. I'm just adjusting the timeline to fit, and then put in a frame with 0 opacity. Of course, I'll need to add 100 opacity to the starting frames for each shirt. Then, I'll pick different times for each shirt for the 0 opacity frame, so that they fade away at different speeds. Finally, I'll give them each different easing methods, just to add further variety. Okay, so we've got the shirt fading away now. Let's go back and play the entire pose. This isn't 100% identical to the one I showed at the start, but it's pretty close. I also just realized I have the rain hidden still, so let's unhide that and look at this again. Finally, just to make the rain heavier, I'm going to duplicate the rain sprite and flip it backwards along the y-axis by inverting the X scale. I want to move it over slightly, so I'll hide the cloud so I can select it more easily. Holding Shift, I'll offset the start time of this rain. Shift lets you fine-tune your positioning instead of snapping to the grid. Now, putting it all together, I've got heavier rain. That about wraps things up. We've got a pose ready to go for our dialogue. See you next time.